simple methods will detox your body and easily balance all of your fat-storing and fat-burning hormones. You'll see how this red tea can literally force your fat cells to open and detox your body to quickly cleanse away all those extra pounds and inches. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? If you've been frustrated by your inability to lose fat and you've actually seen fat accumulate as you age, that's the number one sign that one or more of your body's natural fat-releasing and fat-burning steps have been blocked. Taking action is vital, especially if you're over the age of 35 like I am, and you're concerned about your health. If you want to lose stubborn fat around your belly, butt, and thighs, and want to never feel hungry or unsatisfied, today is the day that stubborn belly fat and the fat on your butt and thighs start slimming down fast and forever. I don't even care how stubborn that belly fat has been. If you've always wanted to fit into clothing you've only dreamed about before, I'll show you how you can rebalance your fat loss hormones and unblock crucial metabolic fat-burning steps so you can control your fat-burning and fat-storing hormones and do it as easy as 1, 2, 3. I'll give you the secret red tea recipe so you can make it right in your own home with cheap ingredients from your own grocery store. This delicious zero-hunger, fat-burning red tea with incredible energy properties is about to be yours. Before I give you the red tea recipe, I'd like to share with you the harrowing details of my real-life African adventure and how searching for that no-hunger red tea from the ancient legend restored my health, revitalized the intimacy in my marriage, and on more than one occasion, almost scared me to death. It all started when my husband and I booked a flight to Africa, hot on the trail of this ancient red tea. What was so incredible was that not only did I find this African shaman's no-hunger red tea recipe, this recipe has the most remarkable fat-cleansing action I've ever discovered in 15 years of traveling the world as a medical maverick. I've seen some truly mind-blowing fat loss results, but this red tea is by far the most impressive and the most incredible thing I've ever discovered. I also discovered that this no-hunger red tea's 5 unique ingredients are scientifically proven to trick stubborn fat cells to open and force them to release hard-to-lose fat, and to cleanse away years, if not decades, of unwanted fat. You'll see exactly how these 5 herbal ingredients work in harmony to speak instructions from your brain to your fat cells to burn unwanted fat and shrink your fat cells without any feelings of hunger. You'll hear about my exciting and life-threatening adventure about how I obtained this ancient red tea recipe from a shaman whose hut was perched on the edge of a 600-foot cliff, high above the parched African savanna. When I tried exercising to exhaustion to burn more belly fat, it had little effect on my fat loss. I went to my doctor to find out why I couldn't lose weight. After my exam and looking at my lab tests, he said, "Everything looks good. There's nothing wrong with you. I think you need to watch what you eat closer. Just stick to the medically prescribed diet I gave you. I also want you to exercise more often and longer. I'm sure if you follow the diet and exercise program correctly, you can lose the weight." My doctor just wasn't listening. I had already tried eating less. I was exercising more, and I was still getting fatter. Like every other one I'd been to, my doctor was too arrogant, too sure of himself, and too dismissive to really listen to what I had to say. It was absolutely infuriating. He didn't believe me. Like with everything else in the medical establishment, my doctor was taking the easy way out and putting the blame on me. I was so frustrated that after I left the doctor's office, I broke down and cried in my car. I did everything he told me, and it still failed. Maybe you've had a similar problem, and you know what this is like. So what was really wrong with me? Why couldn't I lose this excess weight? I had no clue, and neither did my doctor. As if that wasn't enough, my marriage was on the verge of complete and total failure. My husband and I weren't anywhere close to being as intimate as we used to be, and I knew that deep down it was my own fault. I was pushing him away because I was ashamed of my body, because I felt like I was becoming a different person. What's worse was that he thought the same thing. I could tell by how he looked at me, or rather the way he didn't. When I asked him about it, he said, "There's nothing wrong." I knew better. Deep inside me, I knew he just wasn't attracted to me anymore. Now, the one thing in my life I was sure of, one of the most fundamental things to who I was in jeopardy. My doctor was lying and my husband was lying. Sadly, my scale was the only thing telling me the truth. Each time I weighed myself, the numbers were up, even as I ate less and exercised more and more. As you might have already guessed, I had a few other nagging symptoms that made me feel sick, like waking up feeling tired even after sleeping 8 hours, frequent headaches, easily getting upset and feeling moody, difficulty concentrating, puffy swelling under the eyes, cold hands and feet, thinner eyelashes and eyebrows, and stronger sugar cravings. Maybe you've had some of these symptoms too. If you have, then it's incredibly important you continue to watch this free video. I just might have the answer to all of your problems. Altogether, the nagging symptoms were causing me to feel tired, frustrated, and really hopeless. I was always hungry. I craved sugary foods and drinks. I was having trouble trying to maintain my blood sugar levels. If I drank a couple of cups of coffee to wake up, I felt jittery. Even if I slept a full 8 hours at night, I felt like I needed a nap at 2 p.m. I knew something was seriously wrong with me, no matter what my doctor said. When I heard this bizarre rumor about this no-hunger red tea, I was feeling miserable. I was 41 pounds overweight. So you can understand why I was extremely excited to find out more. I knew that if I could curb my hunger with it, I could easily lose the weight. That's why I was so eager, even desperate, that I was willing to fly all the way to Africa to find out if this legend was true. Yes, my marriage was in serious trouble. Before we went to Africa, I had to buy new, bigger clothes because nothing fit me. I knew if I didn't do something about the ugly fat rolls on my body, I was headed for a traumatic, soul-crushing divorce. Our lack of intimacy was going to destroy both of us, and the vows we swore to uphold till death do us part. During our trip to Africa, everything changed for the better. I'll give you the details on that in a minute. After we arrived at the remote African village where we would start our journey, the first couple of nights were horrible. I felt like the intense African heat was suffocating me. I was so incredibly hot that I couldn't breathe. I was even on the verge of fainting when our translator told us that it was only going to get hotter by the end of our trip. I would wake up sweaty, covered in mosquito bites, and feeling awful. Daytime temperatures were well over 100 degrees, and there was very little shade. If I did manage to find some shade to sit in, thick swarms of biting black flies would viciously attack me. By the end of the trip, these nasty black flies had acquired a taste for me, and I was covered in red spots that itched like crazy. It gets worse, much worse. As we finally got closer to the remote tribe that guarded the red tea recipe, our guide showed us the trail we had to climb, which was the only way up. It was the steepest, most dangerous-looking path I'd ever seen. It couldn't have been less than 15 stories of winding, jagged rocks and mud, all traced by a single green vine as thick as my arm. To make matters even worse, I was itchy, I was exhausted, and I was struggling to stay standing at all. Our guide hopped onto the path. "It's easy," he shouted over his shoulder as he pulled himself up the trail using the thick green vine. I, on the other hand, was coming up with excuses to turn around. When I looked over at my husband, I saw a glimmer of hope. Hope that there might be something waiting for us up that hill. Hope that this just might end up saving our marriage. I couldn't turn away from it. Not this time. As we climbed and climbed the hills, my muscles burned and my body ached. I'd never worked this hard in my life. Finally, on the verge of collapsing from exhaustion, I just had to take a break. That's when the giant red snake decided to make me his dinner. He could tell that I was in no shape to run away. My husband tried to throw a rock at him, but that only made him angrier. He rattled his tail and looked me dead in the eye. It lunged at me. Everything went black, and the last thing I remember was its enormous fangs gleaming in the African sun. When I awoke, what seemed like a lifetime later, I was surrounded by faces I didn't recognize. I searched them all for answers, but they only responded in a language that sounded ancient and one that I didn't recognize. That's when I saw my husband and our guide push through the crowd, and a wave of relief washed over me. I tried to stand, but I was still far too weak. The guide told me that after the snake attacked, my husband leapt at the reptile with his bare hands, grabbed him mid-strike, and after a struggle, threw the viper over the edge of the cliff. It was by far the bravest thing he'd ever seen, the guy told me with a smile. I looked at my husband, and he looked at me. We shared a moment that I'll never forget. That's when I knew I had to get better, for myself and for him. Then one of the villagers brought me a cup filled with the tea I had traveled so far to drink. After finally trying it, I knew that it was well worth the voyage. From the instant it began coursing through my body, I could feel it energizing my every cell, injecting new life into every limb. My exhaustion melted away almost instantly, and I felt renewed, revitalized, and ready to take on the world. This red tea was unbelievably refreshing, and over the many days I drank it, I was never hungry. This common drink of the village completely eliminated my soda addiction. Other than water, it was the only beverage the villagers drank, which I was told was also why the women were all so slender. After a few days of drinking the red tea, I noticed I was sweating less. My breathing was easier, in spite of the intense African heat, which often rose to a scorching 105 degrees. Even though I had to climb a massive hill to get to the village every day, I actually had more energy than ever before. I started sleeping better too, waking up more rested, refreshed, and actually excited to face the new day. I even noticed myself feeling more relaxed and calm, despite having to deal with all those flies. I was thinking clearer, feeling stronger, and finally seeing the world as it was meant to be seen. My stress had practically vanished, and the anxiety that used to plague my days was gone completely. I was finally happy. Best of all, the weight was falling off me. Day after day, I noticed myself getting slimmer, stronger, and more importantly, not feeling the urge to eat, even though I was burning through calories at an explosive rate. In fact, I lost almost 20 pounds that first month alone. This red tea forced my body to lose the frustrating fat. That's when I knew I wasn't crazy for making this trip to Africa. In fact, it was probably the best decision of my life. More importantly, I had to bring it back to America so I could share its life-changing power with people like you. Here's the bad news. The villagers protected the secret red tea recipe and prized it like pure gold. It was a sacred part of their way of life, and not just anyone was allowed to unlock its mysteries. Only the truly initiated could harness its power. I asked Rose, my new friend from the village, if she would kindly give us the recipe. She said, "I'm sorry, but I can't give you the recipe. Only the village shaman can do that. Only he has the power to entrust you with the ancient recipe." In order to get to this shaman, the path was once again going to be treacherous. We had to walk for 15 miles and climb an even steeper trail for several hundred feet. There at the top of the highest cliff is where I could find the village shaman. What's worse, since the trail moved outside the cover of the trees and into the simmering sun, Rose told us that the only way we'd ever survive the trek was by traveling in the cool of the night. Now, I'll be honest with you. Walking through the African bush